Hello everybody! This is gonna be pretty much a ripoff of TGS Anime, and the only thing I'm changing is that I'm gonna be doing it for Cardfight Vanguard, one of the games I personally love. So you can call me a copyright artist or whatever. If you want TGS Anime, I can gladly take this down. I just wanted to, do the same thing that you did, but for one of the games that I love. So yeah, today we're gonna be talking about could Nao have defeated Gabwellius in Cardfight Vanguard Divinez. Let's get right into the fight. The fight starts, and Nao is going first. She starts out with the grade 0 Heated Blade R-Dart, and Gabwelius Phantom, basically, starts out with Aspiring Draco Kid. And Nao writes Blaze Ember and ends her turn. She doesn't have any effects, no problems in this turn. Going second, Gabwellius Rise Fruition Dragon, and because he's going second, he can draw a card from the grade 0's effect. He then calls Folklore to the rear guard circle, and he attacks with Fruition Dragon first. Drive check, no trigger. Now take the first damage of the fight. To Impulsive Dragon goes to the damage zone. Gabwellius then attacks with Folklore, and now guards with Flare Veil Dragon. Now's draw trigger. Now, is this the best choice? Most likely not. A draw trigger later, when it gets to grade 3, can actually give you an extra 5000 shield, so it is very possible that this was a slight blunder, but in reality, it couldn't be considered a one because sometimes you want to keep some of your offense cards for later, some of your combo cards, so no fault here. It's Nao's turn, and she rides Boulder Axe, and due to the effect of Blaze Ember, it's called to the back row behind her Vanguard, and she soul charges. She then calls Storm Slasher and Boulder Axe to the rear guard circles. She attacks with Storm Slasher first, very good move because in case the person draws a trigger or something. And Gabwellius defends with an unknown card, but it's most likely a normal unit with 5000 defense. Then she attacks with her Vanguard, Boulder Axe boosted by Blaze Ember. This is an 18,000 attack, and usually you don't guard this type of attack because it costs a lot. Gabwellius takes the first damage of the fight. He gets a perfect guard in the damage zone, which is very important for later. Now that attacks with her other Boulder Axe, and it's blocked by a critical trigger. It's Gabwellius' turn. He rides Attainment Dragon. He's discarded Spiral Cutie, which adds Crimson Moon when discarded. Combined with Fruition Dragon, he gets 2 Crimson Moons into his hand. He uses one of the Crimson Moons because you can't activate more than one order per turn, and calls Oriens. With his skill, he Soul Blasts 1, and looking at the top 5, he calls a Reverent Dagger, moving his Folklore to the back row, which will now boost his Reverent Dagger he just called. His Oriens attacks Boulder Axe Dragon, getting rid of Nao's rearguard. This is a good move by him, because Boulder Axe, after it attacks during her next turn, will be able to get her another draw. Nao's deck doesn't have a lot of defense, so these types of draw first cards are very important to keep, and sometimes just to, have on the field so that she can keep drawing. Attacking with Attainment Dragon, it's guarded by Nao's heal trigger, and he doesn't hit a drive check, so there's no problem there. But Nao guarding with a heal trigger, at least in this fight, was a bit common, meaning that she had a lot of heal triggers in her hand or she kept drawing them, which is super unlucky if any of you have played Vanguard. He then attacks with Reverend Dagger boosted by Folklore, an 18,000 attack, which now no guards, leading to her getting hit with the second damage of the game, another Storm Slasher. It's back to Nao. The first grade 3 hits the field, and it's Nao with her Varga Drawgrass. With the effect of the Vanguard grade 2 Boulder Axe, it's called to the rear guard circle. Then she calls her Mythish, the Mythish of Unparalleled, Zalva Dragonia. Its effect lets her Soul Blast and look at the top 7 cards of her deck, adding the Unparalleled Dracus Leaf, Varga Drawgrass Rakshasha. She then calls Roxay, which doesn't let her opponent intercept, meaning the Reverent Dagger and Oriens in Gabwellius' front row are now useless for guarding. She attacks with the non-boosted Boulder Axe, making him use a heal trigger to block her attack. Once again, a heal trigger, meaning both of them are down 1, so there's 3 left in their decks. She retires the Boulder Axe and draws an unknown card. She then attacks with Varga Drawgrass, not boosted, and with a counterblast, it retires all the front row units, including hers, except her new Mythish of Unparalleled, Zalva Dragonia, cannot be retired by effects. But she does retire Reverend Dagger and Oriens on Gabwellius' side of the field. This therefore gives Varga an extra 10,000 power. Now at 23,000 power, Varga is a very strong card. So Gabwellius guards with a critical trigger and a draw trigger. And because Nao's Vanguard is a grade 3, the draw trigger gets an extra 5,000 power shield. So the shield value, if you add all these effects up, 15,000 from the crit, 10,000 from the draw trigger, and 10,000 from the natural Vanguard, this guard is 35,000, meaning one trigger will not break through. Nao has 2 drives though, and she doesn't hit anything. Like, what, bruh? Anyways, Varga restands due to his own effect. Now, she attacks with Zalva Dragonia. Now, Zalva Dragonia, because of its own effect, has a natural 5,000 power increase, and when Varga restands, it gets another 5,000 power. So it's currently at 20,000 power. She attacks with it with the boosted with Storm Slasher, to which Gabwellius guards, most likely with a trigger. Gabwellius now has 3 cards left in his hand. Now attacks with a boosted Varga hitting him, and leading to Steam Maiden Spiral Cutie getting put into the damage zone. It's now even, with both Nao and Gabwellius at 2 damages apiece. Are there any problems with the turn she just had? No, none that I can see. I think attacking with Zalva Dragonia, considering that it's a slightly weaker than her Varga was a perfectly fine move. She doesn't have any more, drive checks, nothing to increase the power. I don't see any problem with her turn. And honestly, I don't see any problem with what Gabwellius did either. I mean, we don't know what he guarded with, so I can't make the assumption, but it looks like both of them played very solid turns. Nothing so far that would cause anything like, whoa, this person did something wrong. Anyways, it's now Gabwellius' turn, and the first time that the audience is gonna see Gabwelius Phantom. Gabwellius discards a random card and now rides Gabwelius Phantom from his ride deck. The effect of the Attainment Dragon now activates, letting him look at the top 3 cards in his deck, adding one to his hand, discarding another, and shuffling the last one in. He adds an unknown card and discards Febrile Dragons. He uses his second Crimson Moonlight, calling another Febrile Dragon from the top 5 cards in his deck. He then calls Pious Breath to the back row behind Febrile Dragon. I'm not quite sure if Gabwellius activated Pious Dragon's effect. Its effect is basically Soul Blast and let Pious Breath discard a top card of Gabwellius' deck, and it gets an extra 2,000. I'm not quite sure if he did that. Please someone tell me if he did, because I'm not quite sure. He then calls another Folklore to the back row behind his Vanguard. Then calls Reverend Dagger, whose effect is if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Gabwellius and no other cards with the same name, you can Energy Blast 3 and call this card to the rear guard. So he does just that. He then activates the Phantom skill of Gabwelius Phantom. This skill lets him bind any number of Crimson Moons he wants, and the front row gets 5,000 power. Important side note though, if you have 3 or more Crimson Moons binded, the front row gets 10,000 instead, but he decides to only bind 1. And he cheats a little bit here by not telling Nao that there's a secret second effect. He begins the attack, attacking with Febrile, boosted by Pious Breath, because I can't tell if he activated Pious Breath Dragon's effect to get the extra 2,000. It's more likely that Nao just took the attack with Febrile at 18,000 because he gets a 5,000 if a Gabwelius Phantom Vanguard is on the field. And boosted by Pious Breath and with the Phantom skill, this attack was 30,000. A lot to guard with. Now, no guards, and Ashura goes to her damage zone. I realized what I just said, Ashura, and no, I just meant Shura goes to the damage zone. Gabwellius then attacks with Gabwelius Phantom. Its second skill activates, counterblasting and putting 2 rear guards into the soul. You're allowed to choose up to 2 grade 3 or less cards from the drop, and call them to the same column as the ones you just put into your soul. And at the end of the turn, put all the called units into the soul. He puts a Pious Breath and Febrile Dragon that already attacked into the soul, and calls out from his drop his second copy of Febrile Dragon and another Folklore. Febrile Dragon gets 5,000 power boost from Gabwelius Phantom's skill. With the effect of the Pious Breath Dragon in the soul that he just put in, he can bind it and draw a card. Now, once again, no guards. Gabwellius has 2 drives on his Vanguard, hitting first a Pious Breath Dragon, and of course, a critical trigger. He gives the 10,000 power from the trigger to his unattacked Reverend Dagger, and the extra critical to his Gabwellius. Now takes 2 damage. Now is at 5 damage, unknown cards yet, but I know one of them is the one where Vanguard gets 5,000 power. If you have a Vanguard with Vanguard Divinez, it gets an extra 5,000 power and 5,000 shield. Now, it's not shown in the anime, but he retires the Folklore in his back row. Folklore lets him retire it and draw a card. He then attacks with Reverent Dagger, which now blocks with a heal trigger and a Storm Slasher, her second heal trigger of the fight, meaning that she's already had to use 2 to guard, so now she only has 2 left in her deck, and a Storm Slasher. Gabwellius then attacks with Febrile Dragon, boosted by Folklore, and gets perfect guarded by Nao. Nao only has 1 card in her hand, her trusted card, Unparalleled Drakusleaf Vaga Drogreth Rakshasha. With the end of Gabwellius' turn, he puts the rear guards he called from the drop into the soul. Febrile Dragon goes into the soul, and most likely Folklore was retired by its own effect to draw a card. Because of the 2 Folklores that were drawn, and because of Pious Breath, Gabwellius has 6 cards in his hand to defend Nao's next turn with. Now, for context, 6 cards isn't a lot, especially against a deck like Vaga Drogreth. If any of you have played Vanguard, you know that 6 cards, unless he has a specific card, is not enough to defend against Vaga Drogreth. So we're about to see how much the anime gave Gabwellius. It's Nao's turn, and her last turn of the duel. She draws and Persona rides, or Malworm rides I guess, into Unparalleled Drakusleaf Vaga Drogreth Rakshasha. Since it's considered a Persona ride, she can draw a card, and the front row gets a permanent 10,000 increase for the rest of the turn. The 2 cards she drew from her Persona ride and her normal draw? A Shura and a Roxanne. Now once again, Gabwellius cannot intercept with his Reverent Dagger. He doesn't have a 5,000 shield now. This is very important. Now attacks with Drag Ridder Shura first, which Gabwellius guards with 2 triggers. He now has only 4 cards left in his hand. She retires her Roxanne and draws a card. Now then attacks with Unparalleled Drakusleaf Vaga Drogreth and boosts with Blaze Embar. Drakusleaf Rakshasha has a similar skill to Vaga Drogreth, but she doesn't have to pay the counterblast now. When it's in Malworm state, she can retire the entire front row and this unit gets 10,000 power. With the skill, she retires both Reverend Dagger and her own Shura. And with all the effects and the boost, Rakshasha is now at a whopping 43,000 power. Then, with Drag Ridder Shura's skill, she can counterblast, and she is allowed to call this card and it gains another 10,000 power. She has now a lot more attacks to go with. Gabwellius doesn't guard against the Vaga Drogreth Rakshasha, and she has, because it has 43,000 power, that's too much to guard with. Now has 2 drive. She hits a Roxanne and a heal trigger. This is now her 3rd heal trigger she's gotten in this fight. It's insane, but only one of them has actually been used to heal. She gives a 10,000 to Varga and heals 1 damage. Gabwellius hits his 3rd damage of the fight, hitting another Pious Breath Dragon. Now the second part of Drakusleaf Rakshasha's skill. With a counterblast, she can retire all the back row units with her standing Storm Slasher behind Zalva and her resting Blaze Embar gone, and Varga withstands. Now, this is where I'm not sure this counts as a blunder or a mishap, because it's not really easy to plan that far ahead, considering in Vanguard the play is always changing and you're not quite sure what you're gonna do. I mean, it's probably possible to do it, but considering what she had, I'm not quite sure what she was supposed to do. But having a standing Storm Slasher that she didn't attack with yet could have been very useful. Personally, I'm not sure what she could have done, but I feel like someone out there smarter than me could figure out what to do, because having a standing Storm Slasher that you didn't attack with get retired and then not being able to have 1 extra attack seems like a slight waste. However, it doesn't really matter as much, because after that, Storm Slasher, when it's retired from the back row, can Soul Blast and it calls back if the Vanguard is in the Malworm state. She calls it back behind her Mythish. Second stroke. Vaga Drogreth Rakshasha attacks a second time with no boost, still at 43,000. Gabwellius takes his 4th damage of the game, and Oriens goes into the damage zone. Now activates her Divine skill, counterblasting 1, standing Vaga Drogreth and getting another 2 drive. Now, Zalva's effect of getting 5,000 when Vaga Drogreth withstands can only apply once, unfortunately. So that means she only gets an extra 5,000 power. However, Zalva Dragonia, when you activate the Divine skill, you can Energy Blast 3, and this card's critical becomes 2. Third stroke, now attacks with a 43,000 power Varga and 2 drives. She gets a critical trigger and an unknown non-trigger. Varga gets the critical, and it's game over for Gabwellius. Or is it? Gabwellius is forbidden Phantom skill art. When the opponent reveals a critical trigger during the drive check, he can either nullify or critical increase. He can either nullify the critical increase or the power increase. Gabwellius negates the critical increase. So that means that he's at 5 damage and it's not game over. Now, is it BS that Gabwellius didn't tell Nao what his entire Phantom skill did? Yes, but honestly, there wasn't much she could have changed. Even if she did attack with Zalva Dragonia, you're about to see why that wouldn't have mattered. Now gives the extra 10,000 power from the critical to Ashura. Now attacks with Zalva Dragonia, boosted by Storm Slasher, who has an extra 5,000 power if the Vanguard is in Malworm state. So at a whopping 43,000 power and 2 criticals, it's blocked by a perfect guard. Gabwellius now has 2 cards left in his hand. Now then attacks with Shura with 45,000 power. But once again, it's blocked by a damn perfect guard. Gabwellius had 4 cards left in his hand after using the 2 triggers, and 2 of them were PGs. What on earth? Now, when I show you this, don't be mad, but honestly, even if she attacked in a different angle, this still wouldn't have worked. She still would have lost. Because even if she attacked with Shura first, he could have no guarded that, gotten to 5 damage, then perfect guarded the next 2 attacks. Nothing would have changed. Or if she attacked with Zalva Dragonia boosted by Storm Slasher, he still would have perfect guarded that attack. And then when she attacks with the Vanguard, he could have very easily still just said, okay, I'm still gonna nullify the critical increase. No matter what she did, this Phantom skill has completely shut her down. But I will say this, the fact that he had 2 PGs in his hand, that's BS. That's just anime plot armor. It's the final turn, and the final turn of this fight. Gabwellius draws, and Persona rides. The last card in his hand, most likely being the Persona ride. With the additional effect of the Phantom skill that negated the critical from last turn, it's now added to Gabwellius. Gabwelius Phantom now has 2 criticals. Gabwellius then calls a back row Swan Lake behind his Vanguard, and a draw trigger to the back row of an empty rearguard circle. With the effect, Reverent Dagger is now called from the drop zone, along with a Febrile from the drop as well. Febrile letting you also call it if you don't have a card with the same name. Gabwellius' deck, I will say, is really good at getting something from nothing. His deck mainly consisting of always having something in the drop that can be called back. Honestly, this matchup was quite bad for Nao, who is really focused on retiring. But as always, his Phantom skill activates again, binding a second Crimson Moon from the drop. His front row gets an extra 5,000 power. On top of the Persona ride, that's an extra 15,000 power to the front row for the rest of the turn. He attacks with Reverent Dagger and now blocks with a heal trigger and a critical trigger. Boosted by Swan Lake, Gabwellius Phantom attacks the Vanguard with 46,000 power and 2 criticals. Now is at 4 damage, and of course at this point she has a perfect guard. She no guards? Wait, what? Sorry, you mean to tell me that the girl who had over 7 dry checks this fight, multiple draws from Roxay and Boulderax, only had 1 perfect guard this entire fight? Meanwhile, you have Gabwellius, who didn't draw as much, but hit 1 perfect guard in the damage zone, and then got 2 more perfect guards off that? What? Now unfortunately takes the last 2 damage of the duel, the first one being her Vargo Drawgrass Rakshasha, and then her Mythish, Zarva Dragonia. Was there anything that she could have done to actually change this game? No, I think she played it about as well as she could, and I don't think there was any fault that she had in this game especially that I can find that would have turned this game around. Unfortunately, I think this was just a case of, number 1, the anime needing to show him beating her. Number 2, his deck was a bit of a bad matchup against her, so I'm not gonna lie to you. Honestly, I feel like this is a bit tragic, and especially at the ending when you can just see how heartbroken Akina is. I mean, they've been together throughout everything, and Akina is heavily actually dependent on her. Ever since he started this whole Vanguard journey, she's been his inspiration, his mentor, everything. Yes, he helped her as well, but it's in the reality that she is just very important in his life. And also, I do ship them quite a lot, so yeah, there's that. But anyways, I truly feel bad for Nao, because I think she should have won this duel. Like, the fact that you only had one perfect guard, meanwhile Gabwellius hit 3, 1 in the damage zone and 2 in his hand, is kinda crazy to me. But anyways, yeah, I'll be probably doing more of these ones. I'm not sure if I can complete all of the card fight ones. I'm not sure without my focus slipping, but I'll try my best. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and like the video if you want more of this. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!